press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update.
Hello dear students, welcome back to biology discussion class. So in this session we are going to discuss KCET Grand Test Paper 9, okay, zoology. Let us begin with the question number 31st, okay. Yes. So question number 31, enzymes that catalyze hydrolysis of ester bonds are called. First option ligases, second option hydrolases, third option lyases, fourth option transferases. See, of the following options, the correct option is. So enzymes now are based on the reaction that they catalyze. They are categorized into 6 groups like oxidoreductases, ligases, lyases, transferases, isomerases and hydrolases, right. So here the enzymes that catalyze the hydrolysis of ester bonds are called as, 4 options they are given here. First option they are given ligases. So ligases are the enzymes that bring about the union of 2 molecules, okay, and second option is hydrolases they have given. Hydrolases, so these are the enzymes, so which break down the larger molecules into smaller molecules by the addition of water, okay. So such enzymes are called as hydrolases. See, usually ಈಗ digestive enzymes ಏನು ಬರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ, so those digestive enzymes fall under this category, hydrolases. So they break down the larger molecules into smaller molecules by catalyzing the hydrolysis of ester bonds, peptide bonds, glycosidic bonds, okay. So the right option here is the hydrolases. So the enzymes that catalyze hydrolysis of ester bonds are called as, okay. So by catalyzing the hydrolysis of bonds like ester bonds, peptide bonds, glycosidic bonds, okay, they break down the larger molecules into smaller molecules. So the correct option here is the hydrolases. And the third option they are given lyases. So lyases also they break down the substrate into 2 parts but without the use of water. Those enzymes are called as lyases. And transferases, one more option is there here. Transferases will transfer a specific group, okay. So hagadre right option yavadu illi, second one is the right option. Enzymes that catalyze hydrolysis of ester bonds are called as hydrolases, okay. Second one is the right option. Then question number 32, pneumatic bonds are expected to be found in, first option flying fish, second option pigeon, third option house lizard, fourth option tadpole of frog. Pneumatic bones are expected to be found in. See, pneumatic bones anta heladre, these are the hollow bones. They are filled with these are the bones which are filled with air cavities. They have a internal space, so that is filled with the air to make the body lightweight for the purpose of flight. So this is an adaptation for aerial mode of life, okay. So the birds are usually the flying animals alva, so they have to keep their body lightweight. So for that purpose the birds possess these pneumatic bones. So these are the hollow bones having air cavities, so they contain internal spaces that is filled with the air, so that will make the body lightweight. So to keep the body lightweight, the birds are having the pneumatic bones. Is sort of an adaptation for aerial mode of life, okay. So among the following options, which one is correct here? Among the following options, flying fish, pigeon, house lizard, tadpole of frog, okay. So the correct option here is the, so pneumatic bones are characteristic features of the birds along. So the birds belongs to the class aves, right. So among the following options, the bird is the flying fish, they are given pigeon, house lizard and tadpole. Tadpole of frog anta helidre larva of frog. So among this the bird is the pigeon alla. So this is having the pneumatic bone. So pneumatic bones are expected to be found in the pigeon. Okay. So remaining fish they are given in the first option. Second option house lizard belongs to class Reptilia. Okay. Then tadpole, that is larvae of frog, amphibia. So pigeon is the right answer. Then we will move on to the next question. In which of the following situations is there a risk factor for children of incurring erythroblastosis fetalis? First option, mother is Rh negative and father is Rh negative. Second option, mother is Rh negative and father is Rh positive. Third option, mother is Rh positive and father is Rh negative. Fourth option, mother is Rh positive and father is Rh positive. So in which of the following situations is there a risk factor for children of incurring erythroblastosis fetalis? See, you know that blood groups, 4 different types of blood groups, no, like A, B and O. So they are grouped on the basis of antigen present on the membrane of RBCs. Like if they are having A antigen, then the blood group of that person is A, and B antigen is there, then the blood group of that person is B. Like that, another type of antigen also present on the membrane of RBCs in the person. Okay. So that antigen, it is called as Rh factor, Rh antigen anta heli karitivi. So those persons having this Rh antigen on their membrane of RBCs, those are called as Rh positive. Okay. And those without this Rh antigen. Okay. So if the person lacking Rh antigen on the membrane of RBCs, they are called as Rh negative anta helti. So during blood transfusion, so Rh factor is also taken into consideration. Okay. So Rh grouping should also be matched. Okay. So here one such incompatibility is seen, Rh incompatibility is seen when the father is Rh positive and the mother is Rh negative. Suppose, see, if the father is Rh positive, that means the membrane RBC is having this Rh antigen, right? And if a mother is Rh negative, she lacks an Rh antigen. Usually there will be no natural antibodies for this Rh antigen. So these Rh antibodies will develop in the person when he or she exposes to Rh positive blood. So when a Rh negative person, Rh negative blood person exposes to Rh positive blood, so then they develop the Rh antibodies. Then against to that Rh antigen, Rh antibodies are produced in the individuals, right? But there are no natural Rh antibodies. Okay. So here one such incompatibility is seen here. Rh positive. Suppose if the father is Rh positive and the mother is Rh negative. Okay. So what happens? The baby born to this couple, okay, may be Rh positive or Rh negative. So suppose if the baby is Rh positive, there will not be any problem during the first pregnancy. Why? Because if the growing fetus is Rh positive, Rh antigen ida, mother is Rh negative, okay, she don't have that Rh antigen. Suppose enadru a fetal blood, maternal blood, mother blood mix aitu andre, when she exposes to this Rh positive blood, so in the mother blood there is a possibility of developing the Rh antibodies, alva. So hagagi, but during the first pregnancy there will not be any effect. Why? Because usually the mother and the fetal blood will never it will never mix up alla. So but at the time of delivery, so delivery ಆಗ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ time ಅಲ್ಲಿ there may be a chance of mixing of this fetal blood with the maternal blood. Okay. So ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, there will be no problem in the first pregnancy. But at the time of delivery, there is a mixing of, there may be a chance of mixing of this fetal blood with the maternal blood. So at that time ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, so ಈಗ fetal blood RH antigen ಇದೆ, RH positive ಇದೆ. So mother blood stream ಗೆ ಎಂಟರ್ ಆದಾಗ ಅಲ್ಲಿ RH antigen ಗೆ ಎಗೇನೆಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಮದರ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ RH antibodies ಡೆವಲಪ್ ಆಗಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. Okay. Suppose during the subsequent pregnancies, suppose if she conceived for the second time, so during the second pregnancy, so these antibodies, Rh antibodies which are produced in the mother blood stream, no, they can leak into the fetal blood. okay, causing the breakdown of RBCs. So that results in severe anemia ಅಥವಾ jaundice ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ನಾವು ಕರಿತೀವಿ. So that is called as what? Erythroblastosis fetalis. So in which of the following situations is there a risk factor for children of incurring erythroblastosis fetalis? So ಯಾವಾಗ ಇದು ಚಾನ್ಸಸ್ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇದೆ? When the mother is Rh negative and the father is Rh positive. Okay, so the right option here is the second one. Got it? Then question number 34. The correct sequence of the air passage in humans is, so the respiratory passage, okay, which the take up the oxygen from the atmosphere, and that oxygen is it has to reach to the alveoli of the lungs for gaseous exchange. So this air passage or the respiratory passage in human beings, it begins with a pair of external nostrils. Okay, let me write the air passage way of air. So respiratory passage, it will begins with a pair of openings of the nose. We call it as external nostrils, right? We call it as external nostrils, followed by nasal chamber. So the external nostrils will leads to internally, the external nostrils lead to a nasal passage or the nasal chamber, then and turn open into the internal nase, or we call it as internal nostrils. Okay, internal nostrils. Then the internal nostrils will open into the common passage for food and air, that we call it as pharynx. Okay, so these internal nostrils will open into pharynx, particular agi helbekandre nasopharynx. Okay, then pharynx open into larynx, then larynx, arising from the larynx is a tight tube, that we call it as a trachea. So that will extend to the up to the middle of the thoracic cavity, and at the level of with the thoracic vertebra enagatte, the trachea will divide. Okay, so after larynx, what is the next structure? That is the trachea. Okay, then trachea at the fifth thoracic vertebra divides into two branches. Okay, that we call it as a primary and left and the right primary bronchi. Okay, so trachea leads to bronchi, then is followed by, so each bronchus, right and the left bronchus, so left bronchus and right bronchus. So these two bronchi, right and the left primary bronchi, no, after entering into the lungs. So each bronchus on entering into the lungs, it will divides and redivides. Okay, to form primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, and terminal branches of the bronchi are called as bronchioles. Bronchioles. So bronchi admele yavud barutte next? Bronchioles. Then this bronchioles will open into a thin walled bag like structure or balloon like structures. They are called as alveoli. Okay, this is the passageway of that is air passage in humans. Okay, so it begins with a pair of external nostrils. So in the given options, which is the correct one? So what is the first option they are given here? External nostril, then nasal passage, right, then internal nostril, followed by pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchiole, and alveoli. Got it? So then first option only correct here. So remaining three options, in the second option external nostril, then they are directly gone to internal nostril. Okay, nasal passage is not here. After the internal nostrils, they are given nasal passage, then pharynx, larynx. Okay, so this is not the correct pathway of air conduction. So the correct pathway of air conduction is the first option, external nostril, nasal passage, internal nostril, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, branchiole and alveoli. Got it? Then next question. So here the right option is the first one. Then next question. Question number 35. Organisms are given scientific names because it ensures that no name is used twice. Both it ensures that each organism has only one name and it ensures that no name is used twice. Then it ensures desired name for the organisms, and it ensures, fourth option is, it ensures that each organism has only one name. Got it? See, the organisms are given scientific names because, see, earlier the plants and animals, no, they were called by local names, okay? But these local names, what the persons were calling to plant, what the persons are given to this particular plants and animals, no? So these local names were confusing. Why? Because the same plant or same animal is called by the same name in different localities. So ಅವ್ರವ್ರ ಜಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಅವ್ರವ್ರದೇ ಆದಂಥ ಏರಿಯಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಅವ್ರವ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ಪ್ಲಾಂಟ್ ಅಥವಾ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು ಅಥವಾ ಒಂದು ಅನಿಮಲ್ಗೆ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು ಅವ್ರವ್ರದೇ ಆದ ಹೆಸರಿಂದ ಕರೀತಾ ಇದ್ರಲ್ವಾ. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಒಂದೇ ಅನಿಮಲ್ ಅಥವಾ ಪ್ಲಾಂಟಿಗೆ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ರೀಜನಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದೇ ಹೆಸರು ಇರ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಓಕೆ, and also the different plants and animals were called by the same name in different localities. Okay, so this would lead to a confusion. So hagagi correct identification was not possible, so that the scientists were taught to standardize the names of the living organism. Okay, they are thinking to give a particular name to the organism so that each organism is known by its particular name. Okay, no name is used twice and each organism is identified called by its particular name. Okay, so then the scientist, the taxonomist, okay, the biologist, that started giving a scientific name to the living organisms. So the most accepted system of nomenclature was the binomial nomenclature, which was given by Carl Linnaeus. Got it? So what is the question here? Organisms are given scientific name because. So the purpose of giving a scientific name to each and every organism is to avoid the confusion. So here in the options, it ensures that no name is used twice. Okay, so that is the correct only. So the purpose of scientific name, providing scientific name to each and every organism, is to, it ensures that no name is used twice. So ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ಅನಿಮಲ್ ಅಥವಾ ಪ್ಲಾಂಟಿಗೆ ಯಾವುದಾದ್ರೂ ಒಂದು ಸಲ ಹೆಸರಿಟ್ಟರೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಅದು ನೇಮು ರಿಪೀಟ್ ಆಗಬಾರ್ದು. ಓಕೆ, and second option, both it ensures that each organism has only one name. So this is also correct only, because every organism, each organism has only one name. So all over the world, ಯಾವುದೇ throughout the world ಎಲ್ಲೇ ಹೋದ್ರೂ ಕೂಡ ಒಂದು ಪ್ಲಾಂಟ್ ಅಥವಾ ಒಂದು ಅನಿಮಲ್ಗೆ ಅದೇ ಹೆಸರಿಂದಾನೆ ಕರಿಬೇಕು. ಓಕೆ, ಸೊ ಇಟ್ ಎನ್ಶೂರ್ಸ್ ದಟ್ ಈಚ್ ಆರ್ಗಾನಿಸಮ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಒನ್ ನೇಮ್. ಓಕೆ, and it ensures that no name is used twice. So the right option here is the second one. So when you look at into the third option, it ensures desired name for the living organisms anta ide. So desired name andre, so ಇಷ್ಟ ಬಂದಿದ್ದ ಹೆಸರನ್ನ ಇಡೋದಂತ ಆಗತ್ತೆ. So this is the wrong answer. It ensures desired name for the organisms. No, the purpose of assigning a scientific name to each and every living organism is to give a proper scientific, that is to give a name to the each organism. So each organism is called by a same name throughout the world. Okay, and no name is used twice. So that is the purpose of giving scientific names to the living organism. Okay, so hagadre right option yavudagatte illi, second option is the correct one. Both it ensures that each organism has only one name and it ensures that no name is used twice. Got it? Then next question. Question number 36. Which of the following organism is or amonotelic? First option reptiles, second option mammals, third option bony fishes, fourth option birds. So which of the following organism is or amonotelic anta heladre, they have given reptiles. Amonotelic means what? Amonotelic means, see, you know the three major nitrogenous excretory materials, right? Metabolic, three major metabolic waste. That includes ammonia, urea and uric acid. Okay. So, depending upon the major excretory materials that the animals are secrete. Okay, some animals excrete ammonia as the major excretory material. Okay, urea as the major excretory material, uric acid as the major excretory material. So, depending upon the major excretory material that the animals excrete, the animals are classified into three types: ammonotelic, okay, animals, ureotelic and uricotelic. So, among these, which of the following is ammonotelic anta kelidare? So, ammonotelic animals alli enagibeku, which is the major excretory material? Ammonia. Okay, ammonia, it is highly toxic, you know, and it is readily soluble in water. So that aquatic animals have adapted to eliminate ammonia as the major excretory material, as it requires some more water for its elimination. So, among this, the ammonotelic animals, reptiles are uricotelic, okay, and mammals are ureotelic. Major excretory material in mammals is urea. Bony fishes is the right answer. Bony fishes are ammonotelic in nature. Okay, the major excretory material is the ammonia. Birds are again uricotelic. Reptiles and birds are uricotelic. Mammals are ureotelic. Bony fishes are ammonotelic. Okay, what is the right option then? Second one is the right option. Then next question. Question number 37. Dry skin with scales or scutes without gland is a characteristic of class Reptilia, class Fishes, third one class Amphibia, fourth one class Aves. Got it? So, what is the correct option here? In the given option, dry skin with scales or scutes. See, Reptilia, Fishes, Amphibia, Aves. So, ಇದಷ್ಟನ್ನು ನಾವು ತಗೊಂಡಾಗ where we can find a dry skin with scales or scutes. So, it is the characteristic feature of class Reptilium. So, the animals of this class Reptilia, they have a dry skin devoid of glands, okay, and they are provided with the exoskeleton of either scales or scutes. Scutes anta helidre, you might have observed the turtle or so in the turtle, if you observe the shell of a turtle, so it is like a hard bony plates ala, and even on the crocodile, okay, back of the crocodile also you can find hard bony plates, no. So these hard bony plates are nothing but the scutes, okay. So dry skin with scales or scutes without gland is a characteristic feature of the class Reptilia, okay. Then it comes to the fishes. Fishes have scales, exoskeleton of scales, then skin is not dry, okay, and they have a scales like placoid scales, ctenoid scales, ganoid scales. Whereas amphibians have a moist skin. Their skin is glandular and it is richly supplied with blood, okay, and skin also helps in respiration in amphibians. And aves, again the skin is dry only because the skin of birds also devoid of glands, but oil glands are except oil glands which are present at the base of the tail. Caprine glands anta kuda heltare. So except that oil glands, the skin is non-glandular, it is dry, but it is covered with the exoskeleton of feathers, okay, not the scales. We can find in the hind limbs, okay, but not on the overall body. So aves, dry skin with feathers. So the dry skin with scales or scutes without a gland is a characteristic feature of the class Reptilia. Then we will move on to the next question. Question number 38. Cells of areolar tissues that produce or secrete fibers are called. First option, macrophages. Second option, mast cells. Third option, adipocytes. Fourth option, fibroblast. So, cells of areolar tissues that produce or secrete fibers are called macrophages. So, your areolar connective tissue, it's a loose connective tissue, no? It's the most widely distributed tissue present beneath the skin. Okay, so this areolar tissue is having a matrix, fibers along with different cell types. Okay, so what are the cells present in the areolar connective tissue? Fibroblast cells, mast cells, macrophages, plasma cells. So among these, which cells will secrete fibers? That is the question here. First option, they are given macrophages. Macrophages, they are the phagocytic cells. Okay, they are capable of ingesting the cell debris or any foreign substances. Okay, then mast cells will secrete two chemicals like histamine and serotonin. Whereas adipocyte cells, we can see these cells. Adipocyte cells are nothing but fat cells. We can see this in a adipose tissue, fat storing cells. Okay, so that is not present in the areolar tissue. And the last one, fibroblast cells. So this is the right answer. So the fibroblast cells in the areolar tissue will secrete the fibers. So fiber secreting cells in areolar tissue are the fibroblast cells. Okay, what is the correct option? Fourth one is the correct option. Then we will move on to the next question. Question number 39. Which of the following type of connective tissue is present at the tip of human nose? First option, cartilage. Second option, none of these. Third option, bone. Fourth option, adipose tissue. So in the given option, which of the following type of connective tissue is present at the tip of nose? So here, tip of nose. So there are they are given two options here, three options. One option they have given none of this. First option is the cartilage. You know that cartilage and bone, can you differentiate cartilage and bone? Cartilage, both are specialized connective tissues only. But whereas cartilage is a flexible connective tissue, whereas bone is a rigid connective tissue. So what will be the right answer then? Tip of the nose, flexible alla. So yavdu irutte hagadre? Which type of connective tissue is present in the tip of the nose? Then the right answer is the cartilage. Third option, bone kottidare. It is a rigid connective tissue. And fourth option, they have given adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is a fat storing tissue. Okay, so the right option is the first one. Cartilage is the right answer. Then we will move on to the next question. Question number 40. What happens during the follicular phase of menstrual cycle? First option, regression of endometrium. Second option, proliferation of endometrium. Third option, reduction in blood supply to endometrium. Fourth option, no effect on endometrium. See, the right option here is what happens during the follicular phase of menstrual cycle? Regression of endometrium. So what is the you know that different phases in the menstrual cycle, right? What is the first phase in the menstrual cycle? So usually the menstrual cycle, menstrual cycle will begin at the time of puberty only. That we call it as menarche. Okay, so the menstrual cycle, it occurs in 4 phases. It is having 4 phases. The first phase is the menstrual phase or bleeding phase anta ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ, which is characterized by menstrual flow or bleeding. Okay, so after that is the follicular phase. Then it is followed by a phase of ovulation, where ovulation occurs, that is release of secondary oocyte from the Graafian follicle. Then after ovulation, the last phase in the menstrual cycle is the luteal phase. Okay, so what happens during the follicular phase? ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ follicular phase ಅಲ್ಲಿ? So you know that during the, so this will come after menstrual phase alla. So first 5 days, usually 3 to 5 days, it is characterized by bleeding. Okay, after that the follicular phase begins. So the anterior pituitary will secrete FSH hormone. So this FSH hormone will stimulate the growth of ovarian follicles. So that ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, the follicles, primary follicles ಏನು ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ, the primary follicles will begin to grow during each menstrual cycle. Okay, under the influence of this gonadotropin hormones. So follicle stimulating hormone. Okay, so primary follicle will transform, it will grow into a secondary follicle, then into a tertiary follicle, and then into a mature follicle, that we call it as a ಗ್ರಾಫಿಯನ್ ಫಾಲಿಕಲ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ನಾವು ಕರಿತೇವೆ. ಓಕೆ, ಸೊ ದಿಸ್ ಡೆವಲಪಿಂಗ್ ಫಾಲಿಕಲ್ಸ್ ವಿಲ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಇಟ್ ಡೆವಲಪಿಂಗ್ ಫಾಲಿಕಲ್ಸ್, ಫಾಲಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಸೆಲ್ಸ್ ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ, ದಿಸ್ ಫಾಲಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಸೆಲ್ಸ್ ವಿಲ್ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ the hormone that is called as estrogen hormone, right? So as the follicles develop more and more, so follicular cells increase ಆಗ್ತಾ ಹೋದಾಗ the amount of estrogen secretion also increases, right? So this estrogen has an effect on the endometrium lining of the uterus. Okay, it will stimulate the proliferation of the cells of the endometrium. Okay, so agar follicular phase ಅಲ್ಲಿ uterus ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು changes ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಎಂಡೋಮಿಟ್ರಿಯಂ ಏನು ರಪ್ಚರ್ ಆಗಿ ಬ್ಲೀಡಿಂಗ್ ಮುಖಾಂತರ ಹೊರಗಡೆ ಬಂದಿರುತ್ತೆ, ಆ ಎಂಡೋಮಿಟ್ರಿಯಂ ರೀಜನರೇಟ್ ಆಗಬೇಕು. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ಎಂಡೋಮಿಟ್ರಿಯಂ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಟು ರೀಜನರೇಟ್. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ರೀಜನರೇಷನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ದ ಥಿಕ್ನಿಂಗ್ ಆಫ್ ಎಂಡೋಮಿಟ್ರಿಯಂ occurs during the follicular phase of the menstrual cycle under the influence of estrogen hormone. Okay, so what happens in the follicular phase of menstrual cycle in the given option? So what happens in the ovary? Development, growth and development of follicles takes place in the ovary. And what happens in the uterus? The proliferation of the cells of endometrium leads to regeneration and the thickening of endometrium. So in the given option, the right option is the second one, right? What happens during the follicular phase of menstrual cycle? Regression of endometrium is the first option. That is the wrong one. Proliferation of endometrium, the endometrial cells divides, so that leads to the regeneration of endometrium. Then reduction in blood supply to endometrium. Then no effect on endometrium. So the right option here is the proliferation of endometrium. Got it? Then what is the correct answer? Second one is the correct answer. Then we'll move on to the next question. Question number 41. So during spermatogenesis process, which stage is the first to contain haploid number of chromosomes? So you know very well about the spermatogenesis process, alwa. So first option what they have given, spermatid. Second option, primary spermatocyte. Third option, secondary spermatocyte. Fourth option, spermatogonium. So which stage is the first to contain haploid number of chromosomes? So you know that spermatogenesis process, that is the formation of sperms. The sperms are the male gametes, right? They are haploid. Okay, but the sperm forming cells, that is spermatogonial cells, which are present on the inside wall of the seminiferous tubules of the testis, no? They are called as spermatogonial cells. They are the diploid, right? So the sperms are haploid and the sperm forming cells are diploid. So which cell division takes place here? Meiosis cell division takes place during the gamete formation, right? So in meiosis cell division, it takes place in two steps, right? Meiosis first and the meiosis second. Meiosis first is reductional, whereas meiosis second is equational. So which are the cells in the spermatogenesis undergoes meiosis first? Spermatogonial cells, primary spermatocytes are there, secondary spermatocytes, spermatids, then sperms. Okay, so spermatogonial cells, they undergo so they also undergo multiplication, but the division, the cell, which type of cell division occurs? They mitosis cell division, right? So the spermatogonial cells undergo a repeated mitotic cell division to produce large number of spermatogonia. Okay, and some of the spermatogonia, by accumulating the nutrient materials, well, they increase in size, they form primary spermatocytes. Then these primary spermatocytes undergo a maturation division, which is characterized by meiosis cell division. So it is the primary spermatocytes undergo meiosis first cell division. So primary spermatocytes are also diploid, no? So these are the cells which undergo meiosis first cell division, alva. So you know that meiosis first is a reductional division, so that the primary spermatocytes, when undergo meiosis first cell division, they gives rise to the secondary two daughter cells, which we call it as a secondary spermatocytes. So as meiosis cell division occurred in the primary spermatocytes, their chromosome number reduced to half, from 2n to n, from diploid set to haploid set ಅಲ್ವಾ. ಸೊ ಅದು ಕ್ರೋಮೋಸೋಮ್ ನಂಬರ್ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಪ್ರೈಮರಿ ಸ್ಪರ್ಮೆಟೋಸೈಟ್ ಇಂದ ಸೆಕೆಂಡರಿ ಸ್ಪರ್ಮೆಟೋಸೈಟ್ ಆಗುವಾಗ ಮಿಯಾಸಿಸ್ ಸೆಲ್ ಡಿವಿಷನ್ ಆಗೋದ್ರಿಂದ, ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಸೆಲ್ ಡಿವಿಷನ್ ಆಗೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಸೊ ಕ್ರೋಮೋಸೋಮ್ ನಂಬರ್ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ರೆಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಡಿಪ್ಲಾಯ್ಡ್ ಪ್ರೈಮರಿ ಸ್ಪರ್ಮೆಟೋಸೈಟ್ಸ್ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿಕಮ್ haploid secondary spermato. So diploid diploid primary spermatocytes, no, they gives rise to haploid secondary spermatocytes. So which stage is the first to contain haploid number of chromosomes? Then spermatid, they are haploid, but they are the not first stage to contain haploid number of chromosomes. Primary spermatocytes are diploid, which undergo meiosis, first cell division. Secondary spermatocytes is the correct answer, because this is the stage, first stage to contain haploid number of chromosome. Then spermatogonium again diploid. So what is the right option here? Fourth option, that is secondary spermatocyte is the right option. So in the given option, so in the third option they have given secondary spermatocyte. Fourth they have given spermatogonium, and in the third option they have given secondary spermatocyte. So the right option is the third one. Secondary spermatocyte is the first to contain haploid number of chromosomes, right? Then we will move on to the next question. Which artificial reproductive technique can help a lady conceive a child if both her fallopian tubes are blocked? First option, gift. Second option, IVF. Third option, ZIFT. Fourth option, artificial insemination. See, which artificial reproductive technique can help a lady to conceive a child if both her fallopian tubes are blocked? So you know that there are so many causes for female infertility, no? Like there may be a formation of tumors or fibroids in the uterus. There the implantation is the problem, or sometimes there may be a congenital defect in the agirata. That means she may have a odd shaped uterus. So there also again implantation problem, or else she is unable to produce an ovum, that we call it as anovulation. Okay, so this is also one of the major cause for female infertility. So at that time also she is unable to conceive, and if our both fallopian tubes get blocked, okay, so fertilization is affected here. So ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವುದು ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, fertilization ಆಗಲ್ಲ. Why? Because the sperm, so as both of our fallopian tubes get blocked, so the sperm and the egg, they cannot meet, so that fertilization will not happen. Okay, so normally she is unable to conceive because our both fallopian tubes get blocked. She is unable to conceive because of the lack of fertilization, right? So because in her, as our fallopian tubes blocked, she is unable to, fertilization will not occur, right? So she can go for, so normally she is unable to conceive or to become pregnant, but she can go for the assisted reproductive technique to have a child. If she want to have a child, she can go for this ART, that is assisted reproductive technique. So which assisted reproductive technique will help her to conceive a child? Among the following, gift. See, gift is GIFT, gift. So this is advice for the females who is unable to produce an egg or ovum, but she can provide she can provide a suitable environment for fertilization, implantation and embryonic development. So for those females who is unable to produce an ovum, so gift is referred. IVF anta helidre in vitro fertilization. Suppose see, if both of our fallopian tubes get blocked, so the assisted reproductive technique will help the female, such a females having both the fallopian tubes blocked. Okay, so in IVF, because fallopian tubes block agide andre fertilization aglike chances iralla alva, so that the best method, so the technique which help to our child is the IVF, in vitro fertilization. So as you know that in vitro fertilization alli enagutte, fertilization is done outside the body, right? Outside the female body in a laboratory conditions. So the egg is collected from a wife or a donor, and the sperm collected from an husband or a donor. Okay, they are collected, these gametes, collected gametes, no, they are allowed to fertilize in the laboratory condition to make a zygote, to induce to, that is induced to form a zygote. Okay. So this zygote is allowed to develop into an embryo. So the embryo with more than 8 blastomeres is then that is inserted. Okay, the embryo with more than 8 blastomeres is inserted into, is transferred to, ಎಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಫರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಫೆಲೋಪಿಯನ್ ಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಆರ್ ಯುಟ್ರಸ್. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ embryo with more than 8 blastomeres, no, they are that embryo is transferred to the uterus. Okay, then further embryonic implantation ಆಗಿರಬಹುದು, further embryonic development will carried out in a natural way within the female reproductive tract. Okay, so the method which help the lady to conceive a child if both are fallopian tubes are blocked, that is the IVF. Okay, but third option what they have given, GIFT, they have given ZIFT, zygote intrafallopian transfer. So again after fertilization, in vitro fertilization, the zygote or embryo up to 8 blastomeres is transferred to the fallopian tube insect, because here both the fallopian tubes are blocked, no, so this is not a suitable method. Okay, so that the embryo more than 8 blastomeres is transferred to the uterus, that we call it as intrauterine transfer anta helti. So that is the IVF technique which help a female to have a child if or both fallopian tubes get blocked. Fourth option what they have given, artificial insemination. So artificial insemination is used to treat male infertility. Suppose if he is unable to inseminate or his sperm count is very less, so at that time to treat the male infertility, artificial insemination is suggested. Okay, so the right option here is IVF, in vitro fertilization. So right option is second one. Then we will move on to the next question. Question number 43. Mussel contains a red colored oxygen containing pigment that is called as rhodopsin. Second option, hemocyanin. Third option, myoglobin. Fourth option, anthocyanin. See, mussels. So what type of pigment present in the mussels? You know about white mussel fibers, red mussel fibers. So the reddish color of, dark reddish color of the mussel fiber is due to the presence of this pigment, oxygen containing a red pigment that is called as myoglobin. Okay, so myoglobin is a red colored oxygen storing pigment. So it is this amount of myoglobin, no, it is some mussels, in some mussels we can find high level of myoglobin, so that they appear dark red in color. They are called as red mussel fibers. Okay, and whereas some mussel fibers, they have a less content of this myoglobin, so they have a less myoglobin, so that they appear either pale or white in color. We call it as a white mussel fiber. So what is the correct option here? Mussel contains a red colored oxygen containing pigment that is called as myoglobin. So it carries oxygen, it binds with the oxygen and store the oxygen in the form of oxymyoglobin, and that it releases the oxygen during the muscle contraction to produce energy, that is through aerobic respiration. Okay, so the right option is the third one, myoglobin. The red colored oxygen containing pigment present in the mussel is called myoglobin. Then next question, question number 44. Dendrites transmit impulses towards the first option axon, second option cell body, third option synaptic knob, and fourth option none of these. So dendrites, you know the structure of neuron, right? So a typical neuron as a cell body, right? So this is the cell body. So, alright, so this is what the cell body it is having nucleus, okay, cytoplasm, nuclear granules and all, and the shard process which are arising from the cell body. So these are called as what? Dendrites. These are called as dendrites. Okay, and arising from the cell body is another long process that is called as the axon. So this is the axon. So the axon at its terminal end it will branch out. Okay, and which end up in these branches will end up in a bulb like structures that is called as synaptic nerve. Okay, this is the synaptic nerve. So what is the question here? Dendrites transmit impulses towards. So this is the cell body, this is the axon, and these short processes arising from the cell body, no, they are called as dendrites. So the dendrites will receive the electrical impulses from different source and they transmit these impulses towards the cell body. Okay, whereas the axon, the long process, it will transmit the nerve impulses away from the cyton, that is to the synapse or to the neuromuscular junction. So these are the dendrites alva. So dendrites will transmit impulses away from the cyton or towards the cyton. So these dendrites will transmit the nerve impulses towards the cell body, whereas axon will transmit nerve impulses away from the cell body, right? So the right option, these are the synaptic nerves. Okay, so the right option is the cell body. The dendrites transmit impulses towards axon, cell body, synaptic nerve, none of these. So the right option is the cell body. Got it? Second one is the right option. Then next question, question number 45. Relaxin is a hormone which is secreted by ovary, both placenta and ovary. Third option, anterior lobe of pituitary, and the fourth option, placenta. So relaxin hormone. So usually there is this relaxin hormone. No? It is primarily it is secreted in the ovary by corpus luteum. Okay, and its level, the level of this relaxin hormone, it will increases during a pregnancy. Okay, and it further increases at the time of delivery. Okay, so when a woman is pregnant, this relaxin hormone, placenta will also secrete this relaxin hormone. Okay, so this hormone is secreted both by ovary and as well as the placenta. So what is the function of this relaxin hormone? So it is thought that it is believed that it relaxes the wall of the uterus and prepare it for pregnancy, and also it prevents premature delivery by preventing the contraction. And at the time of delivery, so this hormone level increases, no, that at the time of delivery, so this hormone is assisting in the childbirth. That means it is helpful at the time of childbirth or at the time of delivery. How anta ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, so because this relaxin hormone, no, it relaxes the ligaments of the pelvic. Okay, so it relaxes the pelvic ligaments and also it softens and widens the cervix. So thereby it helps in the parturition or the delivery of the baby. Okay, so the relaxin hormone is secreted both by ovary and as well as the placenta. So the right option, so anterior lobe of pituitary anta kottidare. So relaxin is secreted by ovary and as well as placenta, right? So second one is the right answer. Then we will move on to the next question. A hormone which is responsible for normal sleep-wake cycle is epinephrine, first option. Second option, melatonin. Third option, gastrin. Fourth option, insulin. So epinephrine, it is usually it is secreted during emergency situation. Okay, epinephrine, norepinephrine, adrenaline, noradrenaline anta helತೀವಿ ಅಲ್ವಾ. So that is secreted, these hormones are secreted by the adrenal medulla during emergency situations, right? And whereas melatonin hormone, so this is the correct option. Melatonin hormone is secreted by the pineal gland, which is present at the dorsal side of the forebrain. Okay, so this hormone will controls the diurnal rhythm of the body, and the 24-hour rhythm of the body is regulated by this melatonin hormone. So this hormone secretion, no, it is usually peak. The secretion of this hormone is usually high in the evening and also in the midnight, but the secretion of this hormone, it is less. It has a maximum concentration in the midnight, but minimum concentration in the noon. Why? Because the light reduces the secretion of this melatonin hormone. Okay, so this hormone is responsible for uh, regulating the normal rhythm of sleep wake cycle. Okay, so that is the right option, melatonin. And gastrin is secreted by the pyloric part of the stomach. Okay, so this hormone which helps in digestion, it stimulates the gastric glands to secrete the gastric juice for digestion of the food. And insulin hormone, okay, so the you know that insulin, glucagon, right? So the insulin hormone, it play a major role in glucose, blood glucose homeostasis, right? So the hormone which is responsible for normal sleep wake cycle is the hormone that is melatonin. So second option is the correct one. Then next question, bell shaped age pyramid indicates that. First option, post reproductive individuals are comparatively fewer. Second option, number of pre-reproductive and reproductive individual is almost equal. Third option, all of this. Fourth option, the population size remains stable. Bell-shaped age pyramid. You know about age pyramid, right? So age pyramids anta helidre, it's nothing but age pyramids. So that is nothing but a graphical representation, right? Age pyramid is a graphical representation showing the abundance of the individuals belongs to different age group. Okay, so this age pyramid will help to know the status of the population size, whether the population is going to uh, whether the population is a growing population, or whether it is a stable one, or it is a declining population, right? So you know that a population at any time having different age group individuals, no, right? Pre-reproductive, reproductive, and post-reproductive age individuals. Okay, so this age pyramids, they are nothing but the graphical representation of the abundance of individuals of different age groups, right? So there are three types of age pyramids: triangular age pyramid, second one is bell shaped age pyramid, and urn shaped age pyramid ಇದೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ. So in this question, bell shaped age pyramid indicates that ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ. So bell shape ಯಾವ ತರ ಇರುತ್ತೆ bell shape? So usually in the age pyramids, the pre-reproductive age individuals are present at the base. Okay, pre-reproductive individuals are present at the base. Then followed by reproductive age individuals. So reproductive age individuals, then post reproductive age individuals. So this is the bell shaped age pyramid anta ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ ನಾವು. So in bell shaped age pyramid, we can see these are the post reproductive age individuals. They will come at the top. Okay, so here in the bell shaped age pyramid, you can observe that reproductive age individuals and pre-reproductive age individuals, they are almost equal alva. So pre-reproductive and reproductive age group individuals are almost equal, and post reproductive age individuals, no, they are comparatively they are fewer in number, right? So it is representing a stable population, growing population, or declining population? So it is representing a stable population. Why? Because the number of pre-reproductive and reproductive age individuals, they are same, alva. So they are almost equal idare. Suppose if pre-reproductive individuals are more anta ittu anta heladre, so more and more that is pre-reproductive age group individuals will enter into reproductive phase, no? So that represent triangular age pyramid. So that will represent a growing population. But here pre-reproductive and reproductive age individuals are almost equal, no? So this is representing, this age pyramid is representing a stable population. So what are the options here? First option, post-reproductive individuals are comparatively fewer. Yes, post-reproductive age individuals are comparatively fewer, and number of pre-reproductive and reproductive individual is almost equal. Yes, the number of reproductive and pre-reproductive age individuals are almost equal. And third option, all of these. Let us check fourth option also. The population size remains stable. Yes, as pre-reproductive and reproductive individuals are present in equal proportion, no? So this is representing a stable population. So all the statements are correct only here. So we go with the option third one. We go with the option third one, that is all of these. So all the statements are correct here. Okay. Then next question. Question number 48. In IUD contraception, sperm motility decreases due to first option zinc ions, second option chloride ions, third option copper ions, fourth option iron ions. So IUDs anta heladre they are nothing but intrauterine devices alva. So these devices are of three types, you know, that is inert IUD, copper releasing IUDs, and hormone releasing IUDs. So each IUDs play their own role in preventing the conception. So in the given question, in IUD contraception, sperm motility decreases due to the presence of which ions? So this is the copper ions. Okay. So you know about copper releasing IUDs, no? So the copper releasing IUDs which are inserted into the uterus, no? They have ionizable copper. They releases copper ions in a slow quantity. Okay. So about 50 micrograms per day release ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ. So these released copper ions, they suppresses the sperm motility. Sperm motility na reduce ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ copper ions. So along with they also reduces the fertilizing ability or the capacity of the sperms. Okay. So in IUD contraception, sperm motility decreases due to which of the following ions? It is because of copper ions. So the right option here is the third one, copper ions. Then we will move on to the next question. What is the correct option? Copper ions is the correct option. The next question. ZZZW mechanism of sex determination is found in birds, second one human, third one snake, fourth option insects. ZZZW mechanism, sex determination, you know, different types of sex determination mechanisms, no? Like XX and XO type of sex determination, then XX and XY type of sex determination, then ZZ and ZW type of sex determination, then ZZ and ZO type of sex determination, right? So XX, XO type of sex determination, then XX and XY type of sex determination. So both are an example for male heterogametic. Both are example for male heterogametic. So that means the males will produce two types of gametes because their sex chromosomes. They have different sex chromosomes, no, like X and Y chromosomes. Here only X chromosome. Okay, so the two types of gametes are produced here. Okay, when it comes to this XX and XO, half of the gametes with X chromosome and half of the gametes with no chromosome. In XX and XY, half of the gametes containing X chromosome and half of the gametes, that is 50% of the gametes, will contain Y chromosome. Okay, so it's an example for male heterogametes. Whereas females, no, see here, females are having same similar X chromosome, similar type of chromosomes, that is X chromosomes. So the females will produce only one type of gamete. So here the sex is determined by the type of the sperm fuses with the egg. Got it? And in other type of sex determining mechanisms like ZZ and ZW, ZZ and ZO. Okay, so these are an example for female heterogametes. So this example for female heterogamete, right? So here instead of XX and XY, they have used different symbols like ZZ, ZW na use ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. Why? Because to avoid confusion, to differentiate a female heterogamete, that is ZW, from the male heterogamete, that is the XY. Okay, so XX and XO type of sex determination we find in large number of insects like grasshopper and all. And XX XY type of sex determination, you know. Okay, so in mammals and Drosophila we can find this type of sex determination, that is XX and XY type of sex determination. In ZZ and ZW type of sex determination, okay, this we've seen in the birds. Okay, and ZZ and ZO type of sex determination is seen in butterfly and moths, right? So ZZ, ZW is an example for female heterogamete, alva. So the females having their females are heteromorphic sex chromosomes. That means they have two different sex chromosomes. They are designated as Z and W chromosome. But so that the females produce two types of gametes, right? So half of the gamete containing the autosomes plus Z chromosome, and remaining of 50% of the gametes containing autosomes plus W chromosome, right? So, but males are homogametic. They have homomorphic sex chromosomes, that is Z and Z chromosome. So, the males produce only one type of gametes, wherein all the gametes contain the autosomes along with a Z chromosome. Okay, so here the sex of the offspring is determined by the type of the egg which is fertilized by the sperm. Here the sex is determined by which type of egg is fertilized by the sperm. Suppose if this Z chromosome containing egg is fertilized by the sperm, so A plus Z, okay, if it is fertilized by the sperm, Z containing ovum or egg fertilized by the sperm, this will result in autosomes plus ZZ, no? So that results in the male offspring, male progeny. Suppose if the egg containing W chromosome is fertilized by the sperm, so this results in autosomes plus ZW, right? So this results in a female offspring. Got it? So this is an example for ZZ and ZW type of sex determination is found in birds. Okay, so which is an example for female heterogamete. Got it? So among the following options, which is the correct one? Birds. First option is the correct one. Right? Then next option, sorry, next question. We move on to the next question. Next question. Yes. If hemophilic female survives and marries a normal male, then first option, all sons are hemophilic. Second option, all daughters and all sons are hemophilic. Third option, all offsprings are hemophilic. Fourth option, all girls are hemophilic. See, hemophilia, you know that it is called as bleeder's disease, alva. So it is caused due to the absence of certain blood clotting factors. So the person with hemophilia, no, they lack a normal blood clotting mechanism because of the absence of blood clotting factors, some blood clotting factors. So that in such patients, in hemophilic patients, the blood, even from small cut also, ಸಣ್ಣದಾಗಿ ಏನಾದರೂ ಗಾಯ ಆಯಿತು, ಚಿಕ್ಕದಾಗಿ ಇಂಜುರಿ ಆಯಿತು, ಅಥವಾ ಸ್ಕಿನ್ ಏನಾದರೂ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕಟ್ ಆಯಿತು ಅಂದ್ರೂ ಕೂಡ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ದ ಬ್ಲಡ್ ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂಸ್ ಟು ಫ್ಲೋ ಫಾರ್ ಅ ಲಾಂಗ್ ಟೈಮ್ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ದ ಪರ್ಸನ್ ಲ್ಯಾಕ್ ಅ ನಾರ್ಮಲ್ ಬ್ಲಡ್ ಕ್ಲಾಟಿಂಗ್ ಮೆಕ್ಯಾನಿಸಮ್, ರೈಟ್? ಸೊ ದಟ್ಸ್ ವೈ ದಿಸ್ ಹಿಮೋಫಿಲಿಯಾ ಇಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ಬ್ಲೀಡರ್ಸ್ ಡಿಸೀಸ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ. And it's an example for sex linked, particularly it is an hemophilia is a X-linked recessive trait. So you know that X-linked hemophilia is the X-linked recessive trait. So you know that which are more prone to this X-linked recessive traits? Males are more prone to the X-linked recessive traits because they carry one, they are having only one X chromosome, alva. But females having two X chromosome. As it is a recessive trait agiradrinda, if only one X chromosome having gene for hemophilia, if other X chromosome is normal, so she will be only a carrier. Okay, she remain unaffected, but she will be only the carrier. So the males are more prone to this X-linked traits. Got it? So what is the question here? If a hemophilic female survives and marries a normal male, what happens? So as it is a X-linked recessive trait anta helidnalva, so what will be the genotype of hemophilic female? So if females to be hemophilic, as it is a recessive trait, if females to be hemophilic, both of her X chromosomes should carry a gene for hemophilia. Usually hemophilic females are very rare. Usually the hemophilic females will not survive. Okay, that's why the question here is, if hemophilic female survives anta kelidare. So just to know the pattern of inheritance here. So what is the genotype? If both of her X chromosome is having hemophilic gene for hemophilia, then she will be a hemophilic. Or else if only one X chromosome is having gene for hemophilia and other X chromosome do not, then she will be only the carrier of the gene for hemophilia. So here female, hemophilic female anta kelidare, so I'll take it as X. Both X chromosomes have gene for hemophilia. If a hemophilic female survives and marries a normal male, so normal male anta helidare, the X chromosome do not contain gene for hemophilia. Okay, let us check the possibility. Right? So here only one of the X chromosome is having gene for hemophilia and other X chromosome is normal, no? So such females are only the carriers, right? Carrier female. So this X chromosome is having gene for hemophilia, so the son will be a hemophilic. So hemophilic male. Hemophilic male. Then here X, only one of the X chromosome is having the gene. So again carrier female. Again here hemophilic son or hemophilic male. Got it? So let us check the options. If hemophilic female survives and marries a normal male, then all sons are hemophilic. See here, all the sons are hemophilic only, no? That is the correct option. Half of the daughters and half of the sons are hemophilic. See here, all the sons get affected with hemophilia, right? But all the daughters are normal, but they are the carrier of the gene for hemophilia. So second option is wrong. Third option, all offsprings are hemophilic. All offsprings are not hemophilic here. Only the male offsprings are hemophilic, whereas the female offsprings are only the carrier of the gene for hemophilia. Then all girls are hemophilic. All girls are not hemophilic here because the other X chromosome she is having, no, that is compensate. Okay, so it's only one X chromosome is having gene for hemophilia. If she is to become hemophilic, both her X chromosomes should carry gene for hemophilia. So here all girls are hemophilic anta helidare. They are not hemophilic, but they carry gene for hemophilia. So they are the carrier. All the daughters are carrier. Got it? So the right option here is all sons are hemophilic. Got it? Then what is the correct option? First one is the correct option. Then next question. Failure of segregation of chromatid during cell division cycle results in the gain or loss of chromosome is called. First option aneuploidy, second option polyploidy, third option hyperploidy, fourth option hypoploidy. See, failure of segregation of chromatids during cell division cycle result in the gain or loss of chromosome. So that means that is called aneuploidy. Okay, so in aneuploidy there is a change in the chromosome number from the basic set of chromosomes. See, for example, nodiga in human beings, what is the normal diploid set of chromosome? 46 chromosome nalva. So if the chromosome number is reduced, one of the chromosome is missing, say for example in Turner syndrome. Okay, so instead of 46 chromosome, one X chromosome is lacking along. So instead of 46 chromosome, the females having only 45 chromosomes. And say in another example, Down syndrome. So instead of 46 chromosome, the persons affected with Down syndrome are having 47 chromosome. Okay, so they have an additional extra copy of 21st chromosome, right? So in aneuploidy, there is a change in the number of chromosomes from the basic set of chromosomes. That is mainly because of yake agutte anta helidre, it is because of the during cell division. So during anaphase cell division, what happens? The two separated homologous chromosomes, they move to the opposite poles of the cell, no? So here during the cell division, it is because of the failure of the homologous chromosomes, separation of the homologous chromosome. So ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ during the cell division, if homologous chromosome ಪೇರಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ, suppose if the chromosome that is from a homologous pair is failed to separate, so that or else there is a failure of the chromatids to separate, so that has resulted in the gamete with one of the gamete will come to have an extra chromosome and the other gamete with a no chromosome, right? So that a gain or loss of chromosome takes place. So that is called as what? Aneuploidy. Failure of segregation of chromatid during cell division cycle results in the gain or loss of chromosome is called as aneuploidy. Okay, so aneuploidy, it is mainly because of reduction or reduction in the number of chromosomes or presence of extra chromosome. It is because of the failure of the separation of the chromosome from a homologous pair or else separation of chromatids, okay, during cell division. That has resulted in the gain or loss of chromosome. That is called as what? Aneuploidy. Then polyploidy ali enagutte? So polyploidy is a condition where there is a more than two sets of chromosomes. So here cytokinesis fails here. After telophase cell division, cytokinesis has to be happen alla. So here cytokinesis fails, so that the individual they receive the gamete will receive the diploid, that is two sets of chromosome. Okay, that is called as presence of more than two sets of chromosome is called as polyploidy. Hyperploidy is the presence of extra chromosome than the normal. Hypoploidy is having fewer chromosomes than the normal set. So, the right option here is the first one, aneuploidy. Failure of segregation of chromatids during cell division cycle result in the gain or loss of chromosome is called aneuploidy. Next question. Antibody molecule has 4 polypeptide chains. Second option, 7 polypeptide chains. Third option, 6 polypeptide chains, and fourth option 5 polypeptide chains. So you know about typical antibody molecule. So it is produced, the antibodies will produce in response to specific antigen. A typical antibody molecule has how many chains? It has 4 polypeptide chains. So it is a Y-shaped molecule, right? So it has 4, it is made up of 4 polypeptide chains. See here. So this is one polypeptide chain. So how many polypeptide chain it has? 4 polypeptide chains, right? So out of which the 2 smaller chains are called as light chains, okay, and the 2 longer chains are called as heavy chains. So it came with H2, L2, right? So here we can have the antigen binding site, and these heavy chains are having large number of amino acid, whereas light chains are having small number of amino acid. And we can also find 2 regions in this antibody molecule, like constant region and variable region. So constant region alli enagutte, so amino acid sequence will be same in all the antibody molecule, but whereas in the variable region, so you can observe at the tip of the 2 arms of the letter Y, the amino acid sequence changes from antibody to antibody molecule. Okay, so this is the antigen binding site, right? So we can find 2 regions like constant and variable region. So here the question is only the antibody molecule has how many polypeptide chains, alva? So how many polypeptide chains? The having 4 polypeptide chains. 2 are heavy chains and 2 are light chains. And the 2 heavy chains are linked by disulfide bonds, and the heavy and the light chains are also linked by the disulfide bonds, right? Okay, so I have not drawn the complete diagram here, just I wanted to show you the number of polypeptide chains, right? Got it? Then, so antibody molecule has how many polypeptide chains? 4 polypeptide chains. Then next question. Organisms phenotypically similar but genotypically different are said to be heterozygous, second option homozygous, third option monozygous, fourth option multizygous. See, the organisms phenotypically similar but genotypically different. So phenotype anta heladre, it's an external appearance of an organism, whereas genetic genotype is the genetic makeup, genetic constitution of an individual, right? Suppose ಈಗ ನೋಡಿ phenotype, if we take an example of tall plant. Now tall plant na ತಗೊಂಡ್ರೆ, so this tall plant may have a genotype capital T, or it may have a genotype capital T, small t. Okay, So a condition in which the two identical alleles of a gene on a homologous chromosome, then it is said to be homozygous. ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ? Homozygous ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. This is called as homozygous condition. Suppose if the individuals having two different alleles of a gene on a homologous chromosome for a character, then it is said to be heterozygous. Heterozygous, right? So homozygous individuals have two similar type of alleles, whereas heterozygous individuals have two different alleles. Okay, so hagadre, what is the question? Organisms phenotypically similar but genotypically different, they are said to be, phenotypically they are same but genotypically they are different. That means it is that is said to be what? Heterozygous. Phenotypically ಎರಡು tall plant ಅಲ್ವಾ, whether it may be capital T or capital T, whatever the genotype, capital T or capital T or capital T or small t, phenotypically the plant is tall only, but genotypically different ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ we call it as, it has two different alleles ಇರುತ್ತೆ, capital T and small t. So then we can set this as heterozygous. Okay, so what is the correct option? First option is the correct one. Then we'll move on to the next question. Question number 54. Antivenom against snake poison contains first option enzymes, second option antigen antibody complexes, third option antigens, fourth option antibodies. So antivenom against snake poison contains, see, is the time of snake bite, the injection which is given to such patients, no, we call it as antivenom in ಕೊಡ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ. So it contains it is nothing but a free formed antibodies. Okay, so these antibodies, free formed antibodies, no, these are produced against the snake venom. Okay, so this will provide a passive immunity. So the antivenom against snake poison that contains enzymes, antigen antibody complexes, antigens and antibodies. So the antivenom or injection given at the time of snake bite, no, that contains free form antibodies, okay, against the snake venom to provide. So such a immunity we call it as artificial passive immunity anta heli kariತೀವಿ. So the right option here is the antibodies. Fourth one is the correct option. Then we'll move on to the next question. Question number 55. Which of the following is not an invasive alien species in the Indian context? First option Cyanodon, second option Lantana, third option Parthenium, fourth option Eichhornia. So what is the right option here? Invasive alien species. So alien species anta helidre that are non-native species. Okay, so which when introduced because of the absence of the natural predator, they become invasive and causes the extinction of indigenous species. So they cause a greater threat to the indigenous species, no, we call it as invasive alien species anta heli karitare. So of the following, Cyanodon, Lantana, Parthenium and Eichhornia. So Cyanodon is not a invasive alien species. It is found in various tropical regions including India also. So it is not an invasive alien species. Whereas other three, Lantana, no, so it is also it's a serious weed, okay, which introduced into India accidentally, so that causes a greater threat to so many native species of plants. Like Parthenium, carrot grass anta ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಲ್ಲ ನಾವು, so it came to India along with it came to India as a contaminant with imported wheat, but now here it has become a serious weed, okay, and destroyed so many plant species. Okay, it has posed threat to so many herbs and shrubs. Eichhornia is a water hyacinth, it's an aquatic weed, so which is introduced to Indian water to reduce the pollution, no, but it has clogged the water bodies, making oxygen depletion. So that has resulted in the death of so many native species in the Indian water. Okay, so Eichhornia, Lantana, Parthenium, all are invasive alien species, but Cyanodon is the right answer. Okay, it is not an invasive alien species in the Indian context. Then next question, question number 56. The sporozoites that cause infection when a female Anopheles mosquito bites a human being are found in. First option, intestine of human. Second option, RBCs of mosquito. Third option, salivary glands of mosquito. Fourth option, intestine of mosquito. So, you know, Plasmodium is a digenetic parasite. No, it requires two hosts to complete its life cycle. So, it is a protozoan parasite that causes malaria in human beings. It requires two hosts. One is the female Anopheles mosquito and another one is the human. Okay. So, this infective stage of this Plasmodium is the sporozoite. In humans, infective stage of Plasmodium in humans is the sporozoite. Okay. So, this sporozoite will enter the human. So, when the infected female Anopheles mosquito bites an healthy person, right? So, these sporozoites, they are stored in anta kelida, they are found in. See, one of female mosquito, Anopheles mosquito bites an infected person. So, the gametocytes will enter, okay, into the stomach of the mosquito. So, the female mosquito will takes in the gametocytes through the blood meal, right? So, their fertilization and development will occur. The sporozoites are formed. Then the mature sporozoites, no, so they migrate, they pass into the pass in the body cavity, and some of the sporozoites, no, they penetrate the salivary gland and they stored in the salivary gland. So, when the infected mosquito bites a healthy person, these sporozoites enter to the human body, healthy, enter into a healthy person. Okay, it is through the bite of the mosquito. So, before that, ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಟೋರ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಸ್ಪೋರೋಸೈಡ್ಸ್ in the mosquito, the sporozoites are stored in the salivary glands. Okay, so the right option here is the third one, salivary glands of mosquito. Then next question, interspecific interactions arise from the interaction of, first option, population of the same species. Second option, two individuals of different area. Third option, population of two different species. Fourth option, two individuals of the same species. Interspecific interactions arise from the interaction of population of the same species anta helidare. So, you know that interspecific interaction means what? You know that every organism in a nature, if you take a plant, animal or a microbe, okay, no organism live in isolation. Okay, did you find any habitat which is inhabited by a single species? ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ಹ್ಯಾಬಿಟಾಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದೇ ಸಿಂಗಲ್ ಸ್ಪೀಶೀಸ್ ಇದ್ದು ಸರ್ವೈವ್ ಆಗಿರೋದನ್ನ ನೀವು ನೋಡಿದಿರಾ? ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಎವ್ರಿ ಸ್ಪೀಶೀಸ್, ಈಚ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಎವ್ರಿ ಸ್ಪೀಶೀಸ್, ಸೊ ಫಾರ್ ಈಚ್ ಸ್ಪೀಶೀಸ್ ಮಿನಿಮಮ್ ರಿಕ್ವೈರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಏನು ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ? ಇಟ್ ರಿಕ್ವೈರ್ಸ್ ಅನದರ್ ಸ್ಪೀಶೀಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಫುಡ್, ರೈಟ್ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಸೊ ಮಿನಿಮಮ್ ಫಾರ್ ಎವ್ರಿ ಸ್ಪೀಶೀಸ್, ಈಚ್ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಈಚ್ ಸ್ಪೀಶೀಸ್ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ತಗೊಂಡ್ರೆ the minimum requirement is one more species. ಅದು ಬೇಕಾಗೇ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. So no organism cannot live in an isolation. So the organisms in nature interact with one another. Plants, animals, microbes, they interact with one another in various ways, right? For example, ಈಗ plants, they can prepare their own food, alva. They also dependent upon soil microbes for its nutritional requirement. So ಅದಕ್ಕೂ ಕೂಡ nutrients requirement ಇದೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ? So ಅದು ಯಾವ್ದ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಡಿಪೆಂಡ್ ಆಗಿದೆ? ಸಾಯಿಲ್ ಮೈಕ್ರೋಬ್ಸ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಡಿಪೆಂಡ್ ಆಗಿದೆ, ರೈಟ್? So in this way, one organism is being dependent on other organism in nature. No organism cannot live in isolation. Organisms cannot live in isolation, so that they interact in various ways to form a biological community. Okay, so such type of interactions in population where two different species interact themselves, no, so that is called as interspecific interaction. So in interspecific interactions, what is the question? Interspecific interactions arise from the interaction of population of same species, two individuals of different area. Third is population of two different species. Fourth is two individuals of same species. So interspecific interaction arise from the interaction of the population of two different species. Okay, so this interspecific interaction arise due to the interaction of two different species, not the population of same species, or not two individuals which belongs to different area, or not two individuals of the same species. Instead, interspecific interaction arise from the interaction of populations of two different species. Interspecific interaction. Okay, what is the right option then here? Population of two different species alla. So third one is the correct option. Then next question, question number 58. Which one of the following diseases causes dry scaly lesions on skin, nails and scalp? Botulism. Second option, ringworm. Third option, none of these. Fourth option, cholera. So what are the symptoms they are given here? No, like dry scaly lesions which appears on different parts of the body like skin, nails and as well as on the scalp. Okay, so these are the symptoms of the disease that is called as ringworm disease. So which is the causative agent of this ringworm disease? That is, the genus belongs to Microsporum, Trichophyton, Epidermophyton. So are the causative agent of this ringworm disease in human beings, which is characterized by the symptoms like appearance of lesions in different parts of the body, particularly on the scalp, okay, and also on the nails, right, and on the skin. So this is lesions ಏನಿದೆ, they are also accompanied with itching, ಕಡ್ತ ಕೂಡ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. So the right answer here is the second one, ringworm. Which one of the following diseases causes dry scaly lesions on skin, nails and scalp? That is the ringworm disease. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. Question number 59. Which of the following is not a feature of biodiversity hotspots? First option, mostly located in tropics. Second option, mostly located in the polar regions. Third option, large number of species. Fourth option, abundance of endemic species. So the correct option here is, so you know about hotspots, alva? So hotspots are the biologically rich regions, right? So these are the areas with high species richness. They contain more number of hotspots, are the areas with more number of species, and they also have a large number of endemic species. Endemic species means the species which are confined to a particular area. Okay, the species which are present are found in a particular area and they are not found anywhere else. ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು particular region ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬಿಟ್ಟರೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಆ ಒಂದು region ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬಿಟ್ಟರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಇನ್ನೆಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಸಿಗದೆ ಇರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು. Okay, so endemic species are confined to a particular area and they are not found anywhere else. They are called as what? Endemic species ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. Okay, so hotspots having large number of this endemic species, and these are also the areas with more number of species, and these are also threatened with destruction, habitat loss. Okay, and second option, mostly located in tropics is the first option they have given. So yes, hotspots are which are the tropical regions. Most of the tropical regions have a highest species diversity. So mostly located in tropics anta ide, that is right, and mostly located in polar regions. So in polar regions, so if you move towards the poles, the biodiversity declines alva, number of species are reduces. So but whereas hotspots are the ones having more number of species, right? So these are not mostly located in the polar regions. So second option is not a feature of biodiversity hotspot. Third option is large number of species they have given. Yes, hotspots are the areas having large number of species and they have abundance of endemic species. So what is the right option? Is not a feature of biodiversity hotspot anta kelidare. So second option is correct. They are not mostly located in the polar regions. Second one is the option. Then question number 60, last question. In the absence of an external source of water, Congo rat in North American desert is capable of meeting all its water requirements through? First option, internal fat oxidation. Second option, taking liquid food. Third option, reducing its activities. Fourth option, hibernation. Got it? What is the correct option here? So kangaroo rat, which is living in American desert, so it can survive without ever drinking water. So how it requires, how it meeting all its water requirements? It is through internal fat oxidation. Okay, because the internal fat oxidation, the byproduct is the water. No, so it can survive without ever drinking water, and it meets all its water requirement through internal fat oxidation, where the byproduct is the water. So the right option here is the internal fat oxidation. Got it? So in the absence of an external source of water, kangaroo rat in North American desert capable of meeting all its water requirements through internal fat oxidation is the right answer. So what is the correct option here? First one is the correct option. Got it? So this completes all the questions. Hope all your doubts are cleared and you have understood all the concepts. Then I will end up this session. Thank you, students.